Cool, so thank you everyone for being here. My name is Alia Jeraj, and I am an MA candidate in Asian Studies, focusing on South Asia. And I will do my best to project to the back of the room. So before I begin, also, I just want to give a big thank you to Dr. Stir for all of her help in everything over the last couple years, to the Watumull family for helping me have this opportunity to travel to India this summer. So thank you to them. So I spent 9 weeks this summer studying Urdu, and Urdu is a language that spoken is similar to Hindi but has a script that you can see up here. And learning this language has been a quest for me for the last few years. So I grew up, my dad's side of the family speaks a version of Kutchi and Gujarati that are mixed with Swahili, but I only learned English as a child, so over the last 5 years I've been on a quest to learn a South Asian language in the hopes that eventually it will lead me to being able to speak Kutchi. And so that's where my interest in Urdu originally came from, and now I'm writing my thesis about a form of poetry, much of which is written in Urdu. So, why go to Lucknow to study? The easiest and most obvious answer is that's where my program was based. If you want to learn Urdu through the American Institute of Indian Studies, you go to Lucknow. And Lucknow was the capital of the Awadh region during both the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal era, and it was the cultural capital of northern India. And Lucknow is not the only place in India or in South Asia where Urdu is prominent and important. But if you go to Lucknow, or if you meet someone from Lucknow who speaks Urdu, they will tell you that theirs is the best. On my first day at the program, we were presented with a "Welcome to Lucknow" presentation, and there was a slide that said, "It is an undisputed fact that Lucknowi Urdu is the best Urdu." So I'm not here to dispute any facts, but I wanted to point out a few things about Lucknowi Urdu that I did find really special in my time there. So the first is a greeting. A traditional greeting there is to say adab, and that felt really exciting and empowering to have that greeting while I was in India, because that is a non-denominational, secular way of saying hello to people, and especially in today's political climate, that felt really important to have, and just going to shops or greeting my rickshaw drivers with an adab. So I really appreciated that. Running out of breath up here. Another aspect of Lucknowi Urdu is, so Urdu, as in many South Asian languages and other languages across the world, has multiple forms of giving respect to people. So in Urdu, there are 3 forms of respect that you can give. And in Lucknow, people tend towards the highest form of respect. And I read a story about a Lucknowi poet who said, "Even my dog I address as Aap, and if he hears Tum, which is the second highest one, he'll start barking. And if he hears Tu, which is the lowest one, he'll just fall over and faint." And so that form of respect and respecting everyone and everything, I think, is also really special in a language that can be set up to create some pretty distinct hierarchies. And the third thing about the Lucknowi Urdu is the use, so there are 2 first-person pronouns that you can use. One is the English equivalent of me or I, a singular, and the other is the equivalent of we. And often when we English speakers think of a singular person saying, "We are doing this," we think of a royal we, someone saying, "I am making the decision for all of us here." But in Lucknow, the way people use we, or that equivalent of we, is actually a way of humbling yourself and saying, "It's not me, it's not my ego, I am a part of this, I am a part of many." And as a learner of this language, I definitely still mix up when I'm using I and when I'm using we, but it felt really exciting to kind of have that tool and think through, what does it mean for me to say, "We went to Lucknow, we study Urdu." So, in my studies, as I said, I was with the American Institute of Indian Studies, and it was 8 weeks of intensive language classes, 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. Reading, writing, a little bit of listening, a little bit of conversation. Really the thing that I got from my time there was my reading skills and comprehension really improved, so that was exciting. And in addition to the classes, the last week we gave presentations, and I'll talk a little bit more about the presentation that I got to give. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say. Oh, and they would take us out for cultural excursions, so we got to see some of the places around Lucknow that I probably wouldn't have made it to otherwise. In addition to the classes, we had the opportunity to stay with a host family. So this is my host mom, Ruby Appa, which Appa is also a Lucknowi term that really means older sister. I tried to call someone auntie once, and she got very angry at me. She said, "Appa, please." And so the benefits of staying with a family were, I got to practice the language at home. Both my host mom and my host brother spoke very fluent Urdu, Hindi, and English, and so they could help correct some of my mistakes in just kind of general speaking. And they also, again, took me to places that I would not have gotten to on my own. So they took me to, local street food markets in the old city, but also to modern day bowling alleys in the big shopping malls. And I think that's important to point out, because I think a lot of people think you go to India and you see the ancient ruins and you forget that there are brand new, shiny, huge shopping malls that are a really big part of many people's everyday lives. And my host mom also taught me a form of embroidery called chicken curry. So I'm being very vulnerable here and showing you all my first attempt. But if you go and look at, real masters chicken curry work, it is, I think, some of the most beautiful embroidery there is. It comes from Lucknow. And so it was really cool to get to sit with my host mom and learn this form of embroidery as I'm learning this language and learning about the city. And in addition to learning about the language, this program coincided with Muharram. And so Muharram is the first month in the Islamic calendar, and the first 10 days in particular mark a period of mourning and remembrance for the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. And this is particularly important for Shia Muslims, but many Sunni Muslims and people of other religions observe this and remember this. And I am writing my thesis about some of the rituals and poetry that people recite during this time. And many of the most famous poets are from Lucknow and write in Urdu. And so that's another reason learning this language and being in Lucknow during Muharram were really exciting to me. And while my research and my thesis is really about more intimate spaces, and especially women's spaces, it was really exciting to be there and get to see some of the public things. So this is a procession that is happening. This was the first night. And then just being in the city, so sorry for the quality of these pictures. They were taken from an auto rickshaw as we were driving through the old city. But I just wanted to point out how kind of prevalent this period of mourning was during this time. So you'll see this shop, if you look inside, it has lots of colorful clothes, but everything on display is black and white because those are the colors that people wear during Muharram. And in the other picture, you'll see a black pop-up tent. There's a big street in the old city where these tents just lined the street. They popped up overnight, and they marked the entrance to gathering spaces where people would gather to recite this poetry, hear sermons, and you'll see they would be set up so they would offer people water and food afterwards, also sell things. So really, especially in the old city, Muharram was the event for those 10 days. Before Muharram started, I went to an event about Muharram poetry that was presented by a cultural organization in Lucknow, and I got to meet Askari Naqvi, who professionally recites soz. And so soz are one of the genres that I'm studying, and so he recites them outside of religious contexts. And he took me on as a student just for 6 weeks. So through him, or with him, I got to learn a couple different soz, and I also just got to learn more about how you recite them, why you recite them, what has been his history in learning and reciting them. He also invited me for the last 3 days of the time of mourning to his ancestral village, and so I got to experience it with his family. And so you'll see here his uncle is reciting a soz, and he also invited me to recite one, and so that felt very, very special, and again, really exciting to be in those intimate spaces that I will be writing about for my thesis. And so, with Ascari's blessing, I also wanted to recite a soz for you all today. So there are 3 main genres of poetry, and soz usually begin a gathering, and I think they're really interesting because even though this is a time of mourning, the soz themselves are not necessarily about grief. And so this one is about Imam Hussein's mom, Bibi Fatima, and it's saying, "What a surprise to see you outside," essentially just come inside. And the way it was explained to me is that, it says, for others, they have to go through the door, but for you, the walls will open. So come in. And this would be setting the stage then for people to recite other poetry about Imam Hussein's martyrdom. And so I think it's a really interesting way to kind of set the space for that. So in reciting it, I have an invitation for all of you. Because these genres are poetic genres of mourning, we don't recite them with instruments. I'm going to cheat a little bit and use a recording. But what would usually happen is I would be here reciting, and a few other people would be behind me holding a drone, like a tanpura, so going, ah. So I'm going to play a note, give it to you, take a sip of water, and then invite you all, if you're feeling up for it, to help me be my drone as I recite this. So let's. For joining me in that. And just one last thank you to all of you. Thanks again to the Watumull family for helping support this time in research. And yeah, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Is there a Smiley community in Lucknow?
So the question was, is there an Ismaili community, which is a branch of Shia that I grew up in? From what I found, there's not. There's a Jamaat Khana, which is a place of worship, I think it was like a couple hours drive, and everyone I asked said that they didn't know anyone who's Ismaili. So I'm sure there must be, right? It's a big city. If there's an Ismaili in Honolulu, there's got to be one in Lucknow. But yeah, not that I was able to connect with.
If you want to go to Pakistan, you cannot.
I don't know.
Because there is a large Ismaili community.
Yeah. Well, and there are in other parts of India for sure. Yeah, I have not tried to go to Pakistan yet, so I don't.
I've heard that if you go there, India might not give you.
It's also, yeah.
So it's really sad.
Yeah. We'll see. Maybe someday.
Someday.
Any other questions for Alia? Okay, thank you very, very much for that beautiful